order.
Really quickly, Trustee Martin, if you don't mind, we do have somebody on the phone dialing in from 626 something. Is that Jim?
Yeah,
Great.
that's me. I'm on video and then phone for voice.
No problem.
Okay, great.
Okay. So this is being recorded and I'm calling the meeting to order. And I'm asking if there's any public comment on non-agenda items.
No such comments.
I missed it, Alex. Say it again.
No such comment, sir.
No such comment. Okay, sorry, slow ears here. All right, then we're at approval of the minutes for June 9th, 2021. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
So moved. Yeah, second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Alex, is that how we have to do this? Yes? Or can we just pretty much do a voice and you can figure out with only 3 votes that it's.
I
Okay,
think you can do voice.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, I made sure that all happened in sequence, so.
Yeah.
All right. So then I think we are looking to Candace for our 311 report, and this is the final one, 2021.
That is correct. So some of the 311 information is embedded in my proposed adopted budget presentation that we'll do just shortly. 2 things to note just for reference as it relates to the 311. This is our annual reporting. It's our ability to close our books for 2021, as well as then to project out what we're expecting for our proposed adopted budget for 21-22. One of the fundamental purposes of that 311 is also to calculate our 50% law. And so really, if you hone in on that piece, as it relates to the 311, we are at 52% in favor of our instructional. We have to make sure that our resources are dedicated towards instructional purposes, and we have met that obligation. Other nuanced pieces as it relates to the 311 we'll actually do in our proposed adopted budget presentation this evening.
Okay, questions from the members? Seeing none, do you need an official action here at all? Do you need a recommendation to the board or something like that?
Yep.
Correct.
Okay, so you would like a motion that we recommend to the board approval of the 311.
Correct.
So moved.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Thank you.
I wasn't sure how to do this, if it was similar to a board meeting. So I read through and I wrote up questions, but I didn't submit them because I wasn't sure. And a lot of the questions would be my own since I'm new and I don't want to waste everybody's time. So should I ask a couple of them or hold off, or what's a good way to do this?
Why don't you pick up why don't you go ahead on a couple of them?
Okay.
Let's hear how this song is going.
All right.
Because it might be helpful for everybody.
Hopefully we're in harmony.
And this is on the 311. Is that what the questions that you have?
The 311 master report. Yes.
Okay, great.
The
Okay, just
40,
clarifying.
48 or 9.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So my first one, okay, page 5, object 9112. And it also was on page 11, object 9113. It seems that this money is being held by the, was it the county or the state? And I thought I remembered a conversation where we were going to move money to take, to invest it ourselves, that we would get a better return. So my question was, have we done this? And is this the money we would manage ourselves to get a higher interest bearing, higher interest rate, or yeah?
So I'm going to answer it in you've actually asked two kind of questions that are a little bit nuanced. So the 35 million, that is our TRAN. So remember that we went for our TRAN and also a COP in last fiscal year, and this is the reporting of those pieces. And the piece about whether or not we can take funding to invest, actually Jesse was able to get a response from our LA County folks, and I'll let her share out what that was.
So our response is because we're not fiscally independent. So the funds that we're using for operations were not freely to invest in other sources. So unfortunately, although we'll be at a better footage of getting higher return, we're not able to move those funds to other places. So it has to stay in the county.
Okay. Does the county have different funds you can pick and choose from?
No, they are very old style, just a big pool of money. Yeah,
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for looking into it.
no problem.
Yeah. Okay, also on page 5, object 9570. Was this deferred income from the state? Are they making us whole very soon, aren't they? From what they deferred?
Sorry, just looking for that.
Yeah. I'm gonna
If you
open
catch
up.
it first, Jesse.
Okay, so I can probably feel free to chime in, Candace, anytime. So this deferred revenue is as of June 30th, and then we were made whole in July and August. So at the point of where this is populated, it was still deferred at the time.
Okay.
Can I ask a follow-up on that?
Sure.
Usually I think of deferred revenue as just the opposite. I think of deferred revenue as maybe we receive money for income we haven't earned yet. So this was deferred. I'm sorry, this is deferred from coming in from the past. Am I thinking backwards here?
Let me look into it.
Deferred revenue implies to me, I'm sorry, thinking backwards. I'm thinking when I defer revenue, usually it means like I got the cash. I'm not sure if I'm assuming this is a liability account, right? Yeah, it's in the liability section. Yeah. So
Yes,
it's a liability because we received money for revenue we didn't earn.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes,
we're deferring the revenue, right? So it
correct.
doesn't,
So then
we wouldn't be deferring FTES or anything. Would we?
the deferral on the FTES is actually will be shown on line 9130, accounts receivable. So those are the money that we are owed from the state. Yeah.
So
then this deferred revenue piece, yeah, like Trustee Martin said, is the money that we have not earned yet, but we're entitled to them.
How do we know we're entitled to it if we haven't earned it yet?
We are allowed it to a certain portion, but there's certain activity we have to do in order for us to earn those. So then until we do that, then we get to record it on the books, but then we need to exercise those activities.
So I don't want
Jesse,
to, go ahead, Jim.
well, just a quick question. Give me a flavor. I'm familiar with the first one we talked about where we earned the revenue and we didn't receive the cash. That was the big deferral from the state. But give just any example of the second category where we received the cash, but we haven't earned it yet because whatever program it was to be applied to or whatever hasn't spent it, whatever the case might be. What would be one or two examples of that deferral? I'll call it the opposite deferral.
Yeah, and those I could get the details for you at a later date if that's okay. And I can look into that number.
That's fine. Okay, we'll get an answer on that later. So thank you. Yeah, because I think of it as the opposite, like Jim better described than I did, that we received some funds, yet we haven't earned it. Tammy, you want to keep going?
Oh, okay, sure. On page 6, let's see, 9790 is the $30 million of that, the McKinsey Scott donation?
I'll go ahead and answer that. The $30 million of Mackenzie Scott is held in the foundation. It never came into the college itself. It went into the foundation. So it's held in investment accounts there.
Okay.
Yeah, and this 31 million is our fund balance or in our reserve in the case, and this represent about 20% of the reserve.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's see, page 11.
I would
Object-
guess, Tammy, can I follow up on
Yes.
9790?
Yeah.
I'm guessing, because this looks like a statement of financial position, that that's an accumulated number, including prior years. It's not just what happened last year. So just for reference, it's not, there was a fund balance when we started the year and now it's 31. It was probably something, probably wasn't 31 when it started this year, but so just so you know, that's an accumulating number. Okay, go ahead, ask another good one.
Okay. Page 11, object 9113, no. Yeah, page 11, object 9113. Is this money the state is holding for us for the Serafian building?
I mean, 9112.
Let's see, maybe.
Cash with fiscal agents? Tammy, cash with fiscal agents or in county treasury?
Cash with fiscal agents, I assumed in county treasury was for spending. That was our day-to-day business money that we needed. That was my assumption of what that was. So it was cash with fiscal agents. I just didn't know who would be a fiscal agent and was wondering if that was state holding it for us or who is holding it?
So this money will be with a U.S. bank. This is our fiduciary or our fiscal agent that is holding the COP money for the Serafian building.
Yeah. Okay.
Good catch there, Tammy.
Okay. Thanks. So is it like an escrow account?
Exactly.
And okay, this was just for me that on pages, some of the pages, it's really clear that it says for actual year 2020, 2021, that's pages 6 to 25. But then on other pages like 26 to 43, the top of the page says both for actual year 2020-2021 and budget year 2021-2022. So I assumed it was actually just budget year, but I was just wondering, why do those pages have both of those designations instead of just budget year?
So awesome catch. So again, the 1 through 25 is to report the annual reporting of our actuals, our unaudited actuals for 2021. And then we also preload as a part of our budgeting process for 21-22 into the same report so we can share out on what we expect to happen for the next fiscal year, which we'll do a presentation on those items.
So the heading with both of them, it confuses me, but it doesn't confuse you.
It's confusing,
Okay.
Trustee Silver. It's confusing. This report format is actually dictated by the Chancellor's office. We actually input and they generate the report based on data. So this is their format. And we don't have a lot of wiggle room over that. But yes, anything that's for 21, 22 is what we're planning for the next fiscal year.
Right. Okay. All right. And that's everything. That's my
Okay,
question.
thank you.
Mhm.
So I think we do have a motion on the table. And so if there's no further comment or question.
Yeah, it's been moved and seconded.
So all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, so that will go to the board as recommended. It's coming from our committee. And so now we are into our adopted budget for fiscal year 21-22. And I'll just make a transition comment between 311 and adopted budget. Normally I have a difficult time reading the 311 because it's in the state format. And in the past, we've been given a report on how we ended the year in a more normal format that is you could read. I wasn't concerned that that didn't happen this time because in some ways, as we go through the adopted budget, we see the actual unaudited column in the adopted budget serving the exact same purpose that that report would have done. So I want to thank you that in some ways because that's important to me. So in the past, if it doesn't queue up like this, I do like to get the 311 in a format that I can understand, and this ain't it. But the adopted budget serves that purpose. So thank you. Okay, Candace, take it away.
All right. So I'm hoping everyone can see the slides.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Here we go. All right. So as a quick highlight, we want to give you a reminder to what we presented at the tentative budget moment that we had back in June. Just about the governor's budget and the state budget framework that we were given. So the majority of our assumptions that we presented out at tentative are exactly the same at adopted, with a slight nuance that we will show in just a second. We did include in our 21-22 budget the adopted 5.07 COLA increase, so that has already happened. We have expected and have actually received back our cash deferrals as promised in July and August. And I wanted to make a clarifying point because I think this piece is going to come into play when we get into future slides. So currently, the district has not received any of that new initiative-based state funds, okay? So remember, at tentative, we had walked through various funding, not only one-time funding, but ongoing funding that the district will receive based on the budget, a state's surplus. Those things haven't happened yet. We're not worried or concerned about it, largely because most of the trailer bills either haven't been signed or got signed really, really late. So the way that the board will see those augmentations in the future, when they do come, we will always have an augmented, a board consent item where we're augmenting a budget and then demonstrating where those funds landed. All right.
And a very quick question,
Yes.
back on the quick question on the prior slide.
Of course.
Thank you. I assume that's 5.07%. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, understood. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Good one, good one. Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah.
I will fix that for the board presentation. Good
Okay,
eyes.
yeah.
Good eyes.
Thank you.
All right, so here is our general, remember the adopted budget presentation is largely focused on our general unrestricted fund, our adopted budget summary. So here's our summary. What we anticipate in our revenue, our state apportionment, lottery, non-resident tuitions, our CalSTRS on behalf payments, categorical student fees, and others. And the new piece that we've actually introduced this year that we didn't have last year was lost revenue recovery from our CARES and our HERF grants. at about $2 million. And so you'll see sort of like the percentages of where we receive our revenue, our income and revenue, as well as looking at our expenses. From an expense perspective, we tend to around that 89% of our total budget is actually in salary and benefits. So the large portion of unrestricted dollars that are coming in are distributed out using salary and benefits. Our supplies and materials, operating expenses, capital outlay. The reason why capital outlay here is so much smaller, or you don't see a lot of funding there, is because we actually have our Fund 41 to cover our capital expenses, and then our outgoing transfers at about $185 million in expenses.
And Candace, a quick question on this slide. I see the $2 million of CARES and CARE grants, and we've received much more than that. Where would the rest of that show up?
I'm going to hold that question and
right.
answer that in just a bit. We actually have some CARES slides for you too this evening.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome. So this is the designation of sort of the summary of our 311. If you think about that actual fund balance is unaudited, here are sort of the designations between the beginning balances and expenditures. The way I sort of think about this, as Jesse and I were trying to approach this presentation, we thought, okay, how can we discuss and have conversations about any variances that happen? How can we sort of proactively point those pieces out? And so we have this new slide that we just want to sort of call attention to variances that we didn't anticipate for our 2021 budgeted versus actual period. And so let's look at what our unanticipated income. The district actually received lots of funding that we hadn't anticipated. We'll talk through those, as well as our expenses were down, largely continuing to be that COVID impact. So if you looked on the 311, or even if you stick with the adopted budget, you'll notice on our federal income pieces that we have this line 8199, our other federal revenue. In prior years, so in our 1920 adopted budget and even our actuals, we never anticipated being able to charge against our indirect cost recoveries for CARES. And so you'll notice that there's about $500,000 there that we didn't budget for at the adopted budget time. As well as if you look at our local revenue, so we received at the very tail end of the year, and this is largely the state as they're anticipating closing their books, we receive additional funding that wasn't budgeted or expected. And so you'll see about $3.3 million that the college received in our educational revenue augmentation that comes, and then also our about a little over $500,000 in our redevelopment agency in line 8818. And so again, those income, that revenue actually hit us in June. That's when we received it. So there isn't a lot of planning, and it's actually very inconsistent with previous budget years. We also have this other funding sources, so line 8980, these interfund transfer ins. And so that's also this $2.4 million that we've never had to do before, that we actually were able to charge back to CARES our lost revenue recovery. And so where we're trying to demonstrate some variances in what happened in 2021, we've actually tried to proactively account for those in 21-22, which we'll show you in just a moment. Our expenses continue to be unpredictable. You know, every budget year, even this budget year coming into this, we're anticipating things going back closer to normal, whatever that new normal is, right? And so in moving into 2021, we had anticipated being back in spring of 2021. And those things didn't really happen, for various reasons, right? Just due to the pandemic. So we continue to see reductions or limited expenses in our academic and our classified compensation categories. If you look particularly in our academic, like our adjunct, the numbers of adjuncts continue. So there's also less stipends that go out at that time. All of those have a direct impact then on the benefits piece that get generated based on those compensation. And so those continue to be unpredictable as it relates as we're moving into budget cycles, right? We're anticipating on ground. We continue to then, have to adjust and be nimble based on the pandemic. That doesn't always align with our budgeting process. Supplies and materials, you'll see about $1 million, again, less expenses. And our services overall are about 3.6 expenses. And those services overall could be things like rentals, items like utilities, and those sorts of items all get categorized in those areas. And so if you think about that, that's a significant shift in what we projected for 2021. Let me show you then how we helped.
Okay, can I
Of course.
ask for a timeout?
Of course.
Can you go back?
Mhm.
So, because this is all going pretty fast, which is in some ways really nice. So back to 8817, because that happened to be, I have very few questions, but that was one of them. Because last year's adopted budget was 0. And then through the year, I guess 7 million, I think, came in. 2 years ago, I guess the adopted
2 years
budget
ago,
was 0.
yes.
I'm sorry, I read
That's
that wrong.
correct.
So we did know of 7 million, I guess, this year, but that's the state money you were referring to. Is that state that came from federal related to COVID?
This is not related to COVID. This is local funds that come. So it's interesting that you pointed that out. So notice that in 2019, 2020, we didn't budget anything. Our actual audited for 2019, 2020 was 7 million. So then in 2021, we tried to proactively plan for that piece by budgeting 7 million, but then came in higher, again, local revenue sources, things that we try to anticipate it's just something, it's a calculation that's a moving target from the state.
And I'm sorry, I'm trying to understand the source of the funds. Is it like property tax? Is it?
Property tax is actually on.
So it's not related to the property tax portion.
No, but it's sort of like this pie. Jesse does this really awesome pie analogy between our. So I'm going to throw it to Jesse because I don't want to flub it in that.
If I could know how to unmute myself, then I can answer.
It's okay.
So that's if we put it into another name that might sound more familiar, this is the other name would be for ERAF. This is our ERAF money. So it is mostly local, but it's enacted by a state legislator to kind of shift some of that local property tax revenue from like cities and county and special district into this educational revenue augmentation fund.
So I'm, vaguely aware about how the redevelopment districts were shut down and the state reallocated some of that money, but then that's what I thought 8818 was. So I'm a little confused. What's in 8817? I just don't get where it's coming from, other than I never really understood, but I know we get some part of the state general appropriation, right, through property tax.
Correct. Yeah. So then this ERAF money comes in 3 different P's, and it just because of the way that it's come in, so we're accounting for it in three separate accounts. but they're all from the same enactment.
So maybe when you get back to us on a deferred income, you could just give us a paragraph or something that kind of, because I know we have property tax, I know, goes through LA County to the state, and the state gives us apportionment, blah, 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 that I can understand.
Mhm.
We can certainly, yep, we'll
But
drop
I'm
that
not connecting what this is different from that. So, and, we don't need to spend a lot of time on it, other than obviously $10 million isn't chump change, but maybe you could give us a written explanation, just short and simple.
Sure.
How it's different from 8818 and different from the general apportionment. Just so I have a better understanding, because it's
Sure.
now it's starting to get to be a lot of money.
It has I don't have the specific definition, but it does have a correlation to local property taxes
Okay.
and when there's sufficient funding. And so it's an indication that the local property tax collections were higher than were originally expected. And due to legislation, we get a piece of that. And that's
Okay.
why we don't know exactly how much we're going to get every
Okay.
single year, because it's dependent upon local property taxes. And there's the several cycles in the year when the county tax assessor, reports to the state what they project their tax revenue is going to be. And they often underrepresent what that's going to be, underreport. And so it's underreport and over deliver on the tax, on those taxes. And we benefit from that. And so that's why it's a complicated
And it's not
calculation.
It's not a one, so it's perpetual in the sense
Yeah.
that when the property taxes come in high,
Yeah.
we're gonna get part of it. So
Right.
the
And
reason-
if we, and just, I'm sorry, if we were a basic aid district, this is where all of our funding would come from, but we're not a basic aid district. So we're just
Okay.
getting a portion of it, but there are, I think it's 5 or 6.
That's a
districts out
good
there.
enough answer for me,
Yeah.
if that's good enough for the others. So in general, we might suspect with what's going on with property values today,
Mhm.
in the property market today, that number might be more favorable in the future because of what's happening. So that's okay. Thank you
Right,
for that
but I
understanding.
think, but I will, Jesse can take a look and see if there's an actual calculation or percentage that we
I
can
don't-
provide.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a simple calculation, I'll take it. If it gets into calculus, forget it.
Okay.
It's okay. But you gave me
Yeah.
the concept that
Yeah.
what's different about this,
Yeah,
$10 million from our apportionment or redevelopment, which
Yeah.
redevelopment should be going away, right?
mhm, Right.
So, and based on your explanation, I have hopes this number might actually get better before it even goes down. So that's good. Okay, thank you. Okay, so if others are ready, I'm ready to cruise on, Candace.
Okay. All right, so I want to sort of address then, so we
Thank you.
receive these then, additional income, and we had some reductions expenses. So how do then we manage that as we close the books for 2020, 21, and then move into 21, 22? And so I want to really focus on the transfers and the strategy around those. So some of these are normal that we do every year. So we have always small transfers into our restricted general fund, our Child Development Center, Fund 33. That's normally our contribution. The $13.6 million that went into capital outlay was done for two purposes. Largely, we are seeing, it's important that everyone understand that as we are in active construction on our Serafian project, that there are some real challenges with construction in general, with higher costs on materials, labor costs, et cetera, that were never anticipated, or even as it relates to the estimates and the funding that we received from the state, or even our COP that we went for, to help cover our portion of the construction project. I don't know that anyone anticipated that we are seeing up to 29% markups on those pieces. And so we have to be able to manage and account for that in some way. And so these transfers are intended to help with that. So that's one purpose of the transfer into capital outlay. The second piece is related to a potential bond. So we have not formally decided to move forward, right? The board is still considering what our bond options are for 2022. And so our responsibility then is to plan for if the decision either was not to go or if we didn't receive the bond. Remember, we have payments that have to be made on the bond, 2 payments actually, before we would have another bond cycle. And so we need to account for that as well, just in case we didn't get our bond in 2022. And so the intention of moving that is, one, to help continue this construction project on Serafian, and also to help, alleviate any stress as it relates to that bond program in 2022. Our natural transfers to our property liability and self-assurance, that's normal, we do that. $2 million to pre-fund those liabilities. You'll notice a little bit of a change though between our tentative projection and our adopted for OPEB. And so it went from 2 million that we normally pre-fund to 5 million. What we're doing with that additional 3 million is actually moving 3 million to the irrevocable trust. And the intention there is, as we build out that trust, and that the interest related that is earned on that over time, if we continue to invest there, that we would then be able to cover the unfunded liability on OPEB in the future. We're not there today, but this sort of investment strategy will help with that in the future. And so that's the change between tentative and adopted, 2 million to 5, so that we can invest in the irrevocable trust. And then the last 2 pieces really around associated students is our commissions transfer, bookstore commission transfer so the 290,000 that went to 79 as well as our 71. So we were able to actually gain some lost revenue that we wanted to make associated students whole. There are a lot of funding pieces that they actually receive revenue from. An example of that would be like our food services. We do not have a food services vendor. They receive commissions on that. And so we were able to charge back for lost revenue to help them fund some of those pieces, both on associated students, Fund 71, as well as 79. A small portion of that actually went to the Centennial Fund in prep for our centennial in 2024. And I'll pause for some questions.
Okay,
Yeah,
Jim, I see your hand.
Yeah.
Trustee Osterling.
Thank you. My question is regarding Fund 41, the Capital Outlay Fund, and I see the 13.6 that we're transferring in. And this is a question whether we're transferring in money that's on the original budget or over the original budget. In any event, are we paying for and structuring this in such a way that if and when we do a bond issuance, we will be able to restore those funds? In essence, this is being transferred from the general fund, and we would be able to restore the funds that we've taken out of the general fund, put into the capital outlay fund. Will we be able to restore those from a bond initiative?
So I'll answer in 2 ways, and then I'll let Jesse. The first is, so anything that goes can always come back. So we can. So this money is actually being transferred into an undistributed reserve account for availability if in need for the Serafian project. And yes, we would be able to then include that in our bond language.
Okay. Because it sounds like it's not just a contingency. I think I heard you say that costs are up, and I'm familiar with that. That's true. So it appears that we wouldn't just be transferring this in as a contingency, but we would actually be spending that funds as our portion of a overall higher budget, because the state portion, the state piece doesn't go up as costs go up, right? It's locked.
That's correct. That's correct.
So we're
Although a lot of our peers are having conversations like around that now. I don't anticipate the state coming back and saying, we're going to make you whole for the 80% and the overages on that. But there are a lot of conversations in the field about how districts are going to have to manage those projects in these times.
But we're assuming that if it was available from the state, we would try to take it, but we're assuming it won't be, and we're funding it by transferring it out of the general fund, and we will be able to return those funds, be they, the budgeted costs or cost overruns, when we do fund a bond issuance.
That's the intention.
Yeah. Okay. And is there any reason that we wouldn't be able to do that? Let me ask it a different way.
I don't believe, I mean, we can always double check. I think it's always good that you cross your T's and dot your I's, but there's nothing to lead us to believe that we wouldn't be able to do that.
Let's just make double, triple certain that
Absolutely.
that transfer is permitted to return back out of the bond funds. Thank you.
Absolutely.
You have more questions, Jim, on this page?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Tammy, did you have any questions on this page? I don't want to.
No.
Okay, I'm going to ask one that you answered, Candace, and I will confess to have been in a different thought when you answered it. So you mentioned transferring. I just back on 64 OPEB and the 3 extra million, and you mentioned putting that, I think, into our account.
Irrevocable trust, yes.
The irrevocable trust, that's the PARS, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so when we're looking at OPEB, we're not just referring to the portion of benefits that $1,440 annual payment that we give every retiree, but we're also looking at, are we also looking at our is our PERS and STIRS obligation part of that, or is that just strictly that $1,400 payment?
This is strictly, and I'll let Jesse correct me, but this is strictly the OPEB, the retiree piece. Our STIRS and PERS payment come from another line.
So there's not a correlation then between our PARS investments that support PERS and STIRS. The PARS investments basically are just supporting the OPEB, which is our $1,440 per person per year. Correct? Am I remembering that?
Clarify that?
Yeah, well, we can actually look at this in 2 pieces. So
Okay.
on the accounting piece, here at Fund 64, this fund only accounts for the 1340 payment. But when we did the transfer into the irrevocable trust, it actually serviced both the OPEB and the PERS and STIRS. So that the irrevocable trust will do both. So our 3 million contribution or transfer into the irrevocable trust will help fund both of those pieces.
Now you say that, are we allowed to take funds from PARS to support all 3 components, the OPEB, STIRS, and PERS? Is that the way I'm hearing that? Right now we're trying to put it in, but at some point when we need to take it out,
There is
we're
a
allowed to do
yearly,
that.
an annual, and Heva's not here, but there's an annual drawdown that we can do for this purpose.
For all 3 of those.
Yes.
And I realize, again, right now the goal is to put it in, to build it up. And at some point, one way you can support almost anything is just by not putting money in
Mhm.
that you formerly had budgeted to put in. And in a sense, you're giving yourself more money to do whatever you want in general. But there will potentially come a day, we believe, where it comes back the other way. And I just didn't know if we had, what options we had, but it does sound like we have an option when that comes back
Correct,
to fund all three. Okay.
correct.
So I
And
should
our-
not
our-
get that confused with 69. Other internal service fund, PERS and STIRS. So so what's 60, if that's all in 64, what's different about 69?
So 64 is specifically for the retirement piece.
Oh, okay,
That
and
is
69 is
specifically
STIRS and
for that.
PERS, but the PARS services,
This is both.
got it. Thank you. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions on this page? Okay,
All right, and now here are projected fund balances for our budgeted 21-22 cycle, which is just, again, our beginning balance, just noticing that we are adhering to the 18% reserve. And then all of the various income expenditures that we expect in all fund stores. So this is not only the general fund, restricted general fund, all of our, Fund 41. So this is everything as it relates to what we anticipate for our fund balances for 21-22. What I'd like to say in terms of how then we've made some adjustments to thinking about, so that we're trying to be nimble in a very volatile budget cycle. I think the next 2 years, with influx of the funding that we're not only seeing from the state as it relates to these surpluses, but also our CARES and HERTS funding. So we're trying to be more proactive about what we learned about 2021, so that then we can build in a budget for 21-22. And so you'll notice then that's different from where we were at adopted last year to adopted this year. We've actually baked in that indirect CARES indirect cost as a part of our budget. We've actually, one of the interesting differences between our budgets last year was we haven't really predictively dealt with our non-resident tuition piece. That's line 8880. And so what Jessie and her team did was actually look at the actuals for 21-22 and build that into the budget, instead of just rolling over the same budget line every year, actually saying, hey, we're exceeding those and let's actually budget for those. And then she added an additional 1.2%. So that actually accounts for that piece a little bit better. We're also this year now actually accounting for our lost revenue recovery at about 1.5 million for other funding sources transferring in. In terms of our expenses, there are two key pieces that we wanted to make sure that we made some adjustments with. Our supplies and materials, we continue to be we continue to spend less in supplies, but that's actually because we're proactively pre-planning some of those supplies to go actually to unrestricted and restricted lottery. So instead of doing that on the tail end and sort of figuring out how we're going to spend our lottery funds, we're doing a lot of work up front to designate those supply and materials items and actually charge them against lottery before we come. So we've made some reductions in our supply and materials lines. As it relates to services, though, we do anticipate less travel. So we wanted to actually reduce those pieces as it relates to conferences, seminars, and workshops. Where we've increased and are at least are anticipating. So we have about $1 million accounted for in line 5150, our other funding, and it's really specifically designated towards salary adjustments, new positions, due and anticipating an increased FON, our faculty obligation number. Working with Dr. Ramirez, she anticipates that number going up based on the calculation. So we have to be prepared from a budgetary standpoint. And that's where we've added those funds so that when those augmentations need, we have a funding source to then move dollars from 5150 into the appropriate division's budget. And then our distributed reserves of 5189, we have a challenge with our close of the books, and we're trying not to impact budgets for the current fiscal year. So what we do is we designate use of funds there to pay unpaid encumbrances actually for the previous fiscal year. And so there are contracts and services that are rendered or at least encumbered in the previous fiscal year that we are hoping to pay, and we roll that into our 21-22, so it doesn't have to come out of somebody's existing budget. So those are some nuanced adjustments that we're trying to, again, every year we're trying to get better about anticipating, really looking at the data, seeing what happened the previous year so we can make some adjustments for this next year.
Okay, questions and comments?
On that one.
So at some point, I know the board will get a copy of all this, but just for me, real quick, can you go back to 2021?
This slide or this side, Trustee?
One more back. This one. No, here we go. This one.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So just big picture, and I haven't had a chance to breathe it all in. We started beginning balance at, call it 96. We ended at 144. And then if we go to the next 21, 22, we start at 144 and we're back to 98. So there's some big pieces moving on in there between the years.
A lot of these.
John?
Yes.
John, there's really two pieces, really. We're moving a lot of money into the capital outlay fund.
Yes.
Last fiscal, and then this fiscal, we're spending it. There's more than that, but that's the two big items.
Okay. The capital outlay she did explain. So that's the 58 million going to 14. That probably pretty much nails it, doesn't it, Jim? Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Osterling.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So
I
it just
stepped
went
on
by
you.
so fast. I just saw the big numbers on the bottom and I
It's a
said,
lot.
okay.
This is a
Because one of
lot.
the questions I asked pre-meeting was,
Mhm.
when I looked at the adopted budget, I'm looking at 2021 actuals, I'm seeing a pretty big positive number on the end and I'm going, that's a little too good to be true. There's something. So, okay. It's kind of, I see it.
You know, when you step back in the big picture, this is a good thing because what it means is we're finally building the Serafian building. We're showing in the capital outlay fund, we're showing expenditures this current fiscal year outflows of 112 million.
Yeah.
Most of that is going to be for Serafian, so that's great. And
I'll just say that I appreciate the thinking here of the management in the 5189 accounts and the 5150 and 5189 accounts and thinking that way. And I appreciate that extra 3 million going into OPEB. And when I did see that big number on the bottom for 2021, my first thought was there are organizations who have some extra one-time money, and the best use in my mind would be, to the extent that we can, to help use that one-time money that we can't replicate into salaries or anything because it's gone, in supporting our PARs and our OPEB investments where our liabilities are behind, and thereby creating a future revenue source that will come back and help, actually indirectly fund salaries and directly fund those benefits. So I see some of that thinking going on here and just want to commend it. and appreciate it, and saying that's how would be thinking too. So thank you for that. Any other comments or questions before you can move back to where I slowed you down? I did this when I was a student. When I can't keep up with a teacher, I figure out a question to ask just to slow the pace down to help my brain catch up. So
It's okay. All right, so here are just our budgeted positions. We always share out what our budgeted FTE positions, noting, I just wanted to make sure that we noted for 21-22, we're at 52.57% of our current expense of education are 50% loss, so great. And then you'll see we've grown a tidge, by 8 positions here, which is expected. Okay, let's talk a little bit about our CARES and HERF funding. We'll spend a little time focused on our institutional portion as well as our student portion. And so we have done an incredible amount of planning work around our HERF funding. And so this is just to share out about where we're at in expensing those funds. So if you just really kind of look at the first totals, which is the 64 million across, and this is the institutional portion only, not the student portion, the institutional portion. And so we sort of see all of the various block grants that came in, our HERF 1, HERF 2, HERF 3. There's a CARES Act minority portion, HERF 1, 2, and 3, which totaled 64 million. And here's where we've sort of shown and demonstrated in the early 2019-2020 cycle, being able to expense out both our first 3 portions of that block state grant and our federal CARES grant early on. And largely a lot of those funding went for our PPE and our safety issues, related to the campus. And this is really right in March of 2020. So those expenses have been expensed. I'll pause. Trustee Silver?
Are the years meant to be 2021 or 20? It says 2022.
These years up here is when the funds have to be expended by.
Oh, not when we received.
Correct.
Thank you.
Good question.
Ending date. That's what the ending date signifies.
Yeah, here on this row is going to be when, and we have seen that in some cases we're getting extension on those funds, because this is an incredible amount of money to not only plan for, but also to expense in really short periods of times. And so we've already seen some extension on those dates, but this is how they stand today. But yes, that ending deadline is when they need to be expensed by. So right now where we're in our HERF 2 and our HERF 3 sort of planning process. And so you'll notice that then we've expended about $3 million there and have about a remaining balance of our HERF 2 funds at 18 million. Have not made any movement on HERF 3, but we'll share out the planning process for that. And then our HERF 1, 2, and 3, our CARES Minority Act will share out kind of the plans for those funds. But Trustee Silver, you have another question?
I do. So my brain is just linking something that's near and dear to John, and that's our Rosemead campus. And I'm looking at these are one-time funds, and you said they were institutional. Can we use these to purchase or a building for Rosemead? No. Okay.
No, these sources have really particular audit guidelines. And so large capital projects like a purchase of a building or even land is not eligible under these funding sources. Good try, though. Good try.
Thank you.
So then we have so here's where we're at. So what we did, we try to show what we've expensed, and these are as of June 11th of 2021. So we've made some additional expenses since. But we went through this really sort of community-driven CARES ideas process, and we received in lots of ideas from our faculty, our staff, and our students about how we potentially could use these funds. And so here are some of the anticipated. So what we did is we went through all the ideas. There were over 125 actually submitted, anywhere ranging from HVAC upgrades, to materials fees for students, to additional PPE, additional personnel, et cetera. And so we went through that process and used a rubric to sort of say, okay, for our first round of funding for HERF 2 in particular, how are we going to designate? So we designated about $18.4 million to use for these projects. So examples of those projects. So student related, we actually gave all students free UPass, the transit pass. And so the district paid for those out of district funds. The bookstore, so all students, any enrolled students, whether you're taking online courses or not, received $150 credit in our bookstore. And they just go in, use their PIN, and they can buy textbooks and supplies. The institution covered all materials fees. So any class that had a designated materials fee for that class, the college absorbed that, refunded students, and we are using CARES funding to help cover any materials fees, as well as the submission of vaccination records. Students will be eligible to receive a $200 Visa gift card for that submission process. And so all of that planning process went into that as it relates to the 18.4 million, in addition to sort of our employee related care. So we have a host of MOU agreements that you'll see that we wanted to make sure that we're able to cover the cost there. Safety, PPE, technology continues to be a large investment for the college using these funding sources, as well as additional staffing. And so this piece, if you think about this, this was just for fall of 2021. So we would expect potentially a similar investment in the future. So this 32 million's there. You notice the end dates as it relates to the grant pieces. There are potential investments that we can continue to do in the future. Trustee Osterling, I'll take your question first.
I'm going to defer to Mary Aaron. I think she had her hand up first. Go ahead, Mary Aaron.
Thank you, Trustee Osterling. I'm wondering if I don't see ventilation, and I know that that's been a huge concern. And we do have portable air cleaners in the classrooms.
Yes.
But I'm wondering about and I know in previous discussions there has been discussion of upgrading the building ventilation, and I think that's really a very serious concern for all the faculty and staff.
Of course. So that's categorized under our safety. So I can't put I didn't intentionally put every item that we're paying for out of that. So any sort of air purifiers, ventilation issues are actually captured under our safety category.
Okay. Are there plans to actually upgrade the building ventilation systems rather than just put in portable air cleaners?
Yeah, there are some in the plans based on building, but also remember we have an active facilities master plan project. And so where we can do those things, we absolutely have already started that work. Some of our buildings are actually scheduled to be demolished in our facilities master plan.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Jim.
Yeah, a quick question regarding the UPass. I think it's great that we're going to use CARES funds for that. But I thought recently that Metro had announced that they were going to have free passes for students and I believe seniors, which was something that we had been lobbying for some time now. Is that not the case? And there were not free passes for students yet, and therefore we're working for them?
Alex might be able to respond to this if you, but I believe there was conversation about it being free, but then we found out subsequently that it wasn't that free, that there were.
covers buses, but the
Yes.
transit pass actually covers all transportation. And so, yes, the buses piece is free till the end of the year. And so the U pass actually will help with our metro trains and those pieces as well. So our intention is to continue to work and invest there.
Sounds like
Okay,
you
yeah,
answered. I
that-
saw
that-
Cynthia getting ready to come on to help answer, but then she just disappeared on us again. So I think you must have got it right.
We should cover the trains too, if those that are
We do.
fortunate enough to train and get out
Covered
of
under
it.
that pass.
They are covered
Yeah.
under that pass.
Understood. Great. Okay, thank you. You've answered my question.
You're welcome.
Oh, Mark has his hand up.
Okay.
Is there any plan to make this a little more transparent rather than to have these general categories to see exactly where this money is going?
Sure. I got to figure out what would be the appropriate reporting mechanism for that.
We could probably
We
do a
actually
Oh, go ahead.
are intending on hosting a town hall that gives the details on this piece. But remember, this is for purposes of presentation, the lines and lines of detail as it relates to every purchase related to CARES is clearly not here. But our intention was to host a community town hall on that in September.
Mary Aaron, I think your hand's still up, but I'm guessing that's from the last question, maybe?
Mhm.
Emmanuel?
It is.
Yeah, okay. Emmanuel?
Yes, thank you. I just had a quick question regarding the anticipated future projects, regarding MOU agreements. Can you give a little bit more detail behind that? Is that like for legal representation or?
There are some MOU agreements with the various collective bargaining units that will go on the board agenda for September 8th.
So they'll be posted this coming
Correct.
Friday. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think if Emmanuel's hand's gonna go down here soon, I think we're good and you can keep going.
I think
Silver?
Tammy has her hand up.
Oh, I don't see who's,
It blends in with the background. So I'll take it.
oh, yeah, it does. I
does,
didn't see
yeah.
that. I'm so sorry. Go ahead, Tammy.
So have the students taken advantage of these benefits in the numbers that we've wanted?
Let me tell you about our students. They have shown up very, very much for these incentives. And so for our bookstore credit, we anticipate to be a little bit over $1 million on that. I mean, we've had over 7,000 students use the bookstore credit. The bookstore is got lots and lots of orders and they are worker bees to get those all out. But the bookstore has been incredibly busy with students using these funds. And it was really important that we actually place the credit there because if you remember, or if you don't know, that there are commissions that are made that actually go to associated students later based on the bookstore commissions. And so it's like investing, not only are we investing in students, but a lot of those commissions will go back to our associated students.
It's like buying local instead of on Amazon.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So yes, we've had over 6,000. We anticipate the deadline for that credit to be used is this Tuesday, the 7th. So they can continue to place orders for their credit up through the 7th. And then we close it out so that we can close and invoice the college against the CARES funding to pay for those pieces.
Hey, Jim?
Two hopefully quick follow-up questions, and my apologies if these were already answered. The line item called total encumbrances, not a huge number, but what's the difference between that and the expenses? That's question one. And then question two, the anticipated future projects.
Sure. So the encumbrances are items that we intend to buy. So we've received an invoice, we encumber the funds so that we don't expend those, but the expenses are actually when we pay them out, pay the vendor.
Okay. Got it.
And
Okay.
then the
And then how about the, yeah, go ahead.
The anticipated future projects. So this was that planning exercise around how to use these fundings. And you see the anticipated future projects. So embedded with that, in that is us paying for our UPass, us paying for the bookstore credit, us covering all the materials fee, the safety, the technology pieces. Those are all included in that estimated $18.4 million. It's
Okay.
kind
And
of
then
like we see it as an encumbrance almost, an unofficial encumbrance.
And lastly, I would like to reinforce what Mark and Mary Ann both just requested, and that would be somehow if we can show a format of not just what we've spent, but what we've spent it on, number one, and number two, I am very concerned, as is Mary Aaron, that we make sure that we use some of this CARES fund money for improvements to our air handling system.
Yep.
And we are.
And I don't recommend we do it for buildings that we're going to be tearing down, you know, the permanent ones. But I've sent suggestions to Richard and Candace, I think you as well, about different systems that I think we should be looking at, including the ion generating systems, in addition to the HERS level of filtration.
Yep.
Yep.
And most of it, just for clarity, I mean, all of the areas where those could happen have already happened or are actually in progress, in addition to the air purifiers that are in each of the locations on campus. So yes, I echo that. I think it's really, really important, and we've made really good progress and strides against that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
some of the beauty that I see in that is that the benefit extends not to just the students that are here at the moment, but to students and staff for many years to come. So, you know, and it's nice that we have a benefit for students now, but even better when it benefits students now and students and staff for the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with John, and you know, I hate to admit it, but we're still the dirtiest air in the country. And as we see more and more of these massive forest fires, it will be good to have those types of air handling systems, be it portable in the classroom or the overall system or both. Not just for COVID, but for these other issues as well.
Yeah. And we can ask you, Trustee Osterling, we can add that as an agenda item on our facilities subcommittee as well to continue conversation.
Thank you. You read my mind. I would like to see that on our upcoming facilities. Thank you.
We can do that. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, Candace, I think you keep moving.
All right. So then we have also our student portion. So remember, that's the institutional portion. The student portion actually goes directly to the students in their hands. And so here's where we're at today. We've got about 13 million or so that's already gone out. And Dr. Olivo and team are planning planning processes about the expense and how to get the funding out this fall and again next spring using these dollars. Any questions there?
No.
All right, so here's the new sort of piece that I wanted to help provide some context as it relates to strategic investments that the college is making. And so each year this can change. We may want to change this, but this year we thought, let's report out on 3 strategic investments that we use across various funding sources to give some level of understanding about our equity investments, our technology investments, and our facilities investments. And so those are the 3 areas that we've chosen. We could have chosen 3 others, but these are actually for this year really important for the college. And so I sort of picked those out so we could focus on those. So what we often get asked questions about is we have a variety of different funding sources. We have general unrestricted funds, we have restricted funds, categorical funds, and sometimes it's difficult to sort of figure out where the college is pulling money or braiding funding together in order to do some of this work. And so we really focused this first equity piece on our student equity and achievement funds, our seed program funds, to just give you an understanding of what that looks like from a total investment. So about $8.6 million is allocated to the college and are made directly into equity investments. And we wanted to sort of give you an understanding of where then those lines or activities get, where that funding goes to. So a lot of it, just like our normal budget, goes to classified in academic salaries and benefits. Like that is the bulk of our budget. And yet we also wanted to share out like contracts and supplies and fixed aspects that help support a lot of the equity work here on campus, as well as then give you an idea about what are our 2021-22 project priorities. And so as you're seeing items that may come into a board agenda for, hey, we're going to purchase X or we're going to do Y, this gives you a good understanding about, hey, there's a lot of planning that goes during our annual budget planning process that areas and departments are using to then project out what they're going to be doing for the next fiscal year. And so this is just a representation of that. The project priorities, particularly around that C investment, that student equity funding perspective, is we've actually created a new division. There's a division of institutional equity, diversity, and justice, a division that now has a funding source and a budget designated to do that work. Some of the project priorities for that area are going to be creating DEI readiness workshops on local levels. So at each of the division areas, helping them do that in these smaller cohorted areas. Certificate programs for faculty and staff. So DEI certificate programs is being planned and some work activity around that, as well as increased and focused recruitment on Black and African American students. And so while we talk about these investments and when we look at the adopted budget, it is a little bit difficult to sort of see how all of the different various funding sources help support an initiative. So we picked out our student equity and achievement funds to kind of highlight some of that work for you all. Trustee Silver?
Hi. My mind drifted a little bit. So
Okay.
tell me, did I hear you say that when we get funding requests on the agenda, will you have it where it's related to this, that, okay, we've budgeted 8.6 million and you're being asked to approve contracts or expenditures for these various things, and it's pulling out of this 8.6 million?
It's a little bit different. Let me, okay, so anything that comes on the board agenda that's not an augmentation request means that it's been budgeted. So we don't spend funds that are not budgeted. When you'll see an item come on an agenda is if we need to make a budget adjustment, an augmentation, maybe we're over in a particular area, then you will see an augmentation consent item come onto the board agenda. Does that make sense? But every department is budgeted, and we advocate for them to use the funding that is necessary and budgeted and given to them for the purposes of their operational work. So the things that come on, whether they're purchase order requests, whether they're large contracts, those items have been budgeted. where if they have not, you would see them in a budget augmentation request.
Okay.
But this is sort of to help you see, like when we're talking about equity work and we have student equity and achievement dollars, this is kind of where those funding sources, like everything that comes together, this is the combined total. It's not all of the work. Remember,
Well,
this
isn't the source, this is the expenditure.
This is the budget.
Mhm.
Okay,
This
How-
is the budget. That's a good question.
thank you.
Mhm. So let's take a peek at our technology budget.
Okay, there's,
So in technology, our investments are about $14 million. And they're split across salary, instructional equipment, non-instructional equipment, software, consultants, and repair and maintenance. And to say, again, the bulk of the technology investment, which is in our general unrestricted fund, is related to salaries. But there are budgeted purchases. So technology has to be regularly refreshed. It has to be, there's a lot of care and feeding. We have annual contracts that we need to pay for. So for example, our enterprise resource system, our banner system, which is our system of record where we run the budget, where our students register, where they pay for bills, all of that has to be budgeted and paid for. And so that helps you kind of see, when you see multi-user software license, our investment of this total technology investment is around 18%. If you look at our equipment sort of purchases, remember, equipment is largely purchased out of capital funds. But you wouldn't see that on the adopted unrestricted general fund budget, right? But it's a technology investment. And they braid across depending on what's the appropriate funding sources. And we also use lottery to help fund a good portion of our software services. And so this is intended to kind of help you. So when you see in our last board meeting, this is September, so August, we awarded a contract for a telephone replacement.
mhm.
If you remember that, right?
Yeah.
So that is actually budgeted. So you'll see our 21-22 project priorities, that is already embedded within our capital investment funds for that project. So we're not asking the district to make additional investment. That is actually the way that we go about planning that work as it relates to refreshing our network equipment, our security cameras, our telephone system. We actually also are doing some investments on digital IDs and keyless entries, but our intention, that actually is not included in this 14 million. We're actually going to charge that against CARES.
So why is it, I think where my nervousness first emerged was in we would see these huge numbers to Dell computers
Sure.
every month. So I just felt nervous, just constantly saying, yes, this is great, when it seemed it was a never ending amount of money that was being spent on computers, which I needed. And I just wanted to be sure that we were always within what was budgeted for
Yes.
computers.
Yes, you are correct. And technology is a never-ending asset that the college will always has to invest in. And so we have refresh cycles that we plan for, that are budgeted for, that exist within this $14 million.
So it'll end on June 30th or $14 million, whichever comes first.
Right, or as Candace already pointed out, if for some reason we need more than the $14 million, then you would see an augmentation in the budget. So when you see those purchases, you can assume that they're being
Budgeted.
expended, they're budgeted and they're being expended against the $14 million.
Oh, that
Got
makes
it?
me feel so much better. Yes.
Okay.
Now I understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Trustee Silver, I'm glad. We're here to make you feel a little bit better. It's important that we understand. I think what gets lost on folks is because there's these various funding pools of money that we're managing for capital investments, whether it be in technology or facilities, that there's a lot of proactive planning that goes around that every year to designate which projects go into that particular year. So we're not asking for augmentations. We spend within our budget.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, let's get to facilities. That is a significant investment. It takes a village here to run our facilities investment pieces. And so
Takes a village to build a village.
it does. And we're going, we have this wonderful facilities master plan that's also expressing a new vision around our facilities. But just in generally speaking, as it relates to our facilities, there's an incredible investment there that the college must continuously do to make sure the building walls, as I'm sitting in them, don't fall around on us, right? I mean, so there's a lot of care and feeding that has to happen to keep these operations running. And so very similarly, you'll see again, a good portion of the facilities investment is going to be around salaries and benefits. There are a host of projects that happen every year. And so 28% of that project budget is for budgeted, whether it's in our general unrestricted fund, which is largely where our salaries and benefits are, and our capital expenses are here. Now, I'll say two things before I anticipate maybe Trustee Osterling's question. This is nothing related to construction. So none of the construction costs as it relates to Serafian are embedded here. This is sort of like our normal deferred maintenance and planning process as it relates to these particular projects on the lower right-hand side. So Trustee Osterling.
Yeah, thank you. My question on this is a broken record, and by that I mean are some or all of these able to be reimbursed by a future bond issuance? Maybe like, I don't know, maybe like campus-wide painting. I don't know if that qualifies or not, but our capital expenditures of this nature, of this magnitude, $23 million, when we do have a bond authorized and issued, can we reimburse any of these?
There are small portions of this that might, for example, we're doing some design work around a new STEM building. And so the architecture and design work around that pre-planning work could be charged back. But if you're thinking about like our Del Mar landscaping process, those are deferred maintenance and scheduled maintenance items that we would not charge back against the bond.
The way I would view this is our ongoing annual deferred maintenance. So the specific items in 1, 2, 3, and 4 will change year to year, but the general level of funding needs to be consistent to continuously do the next thing, where I would hope our bond money is more one and done towards a building, a campus or something that lives for 50, 90 years or something. So that's the way I would see this, is just the annual renewal of whatever it happens to be.
Correct.
It's more deferred maintenance than a true long-term capital cost.
Then capital,
That's correct.
Yeah.
Trustee Silver?
Minor thing, Del Mar is 2 words.
Thank you. I saw it and I was like, you know how when you catch something and you're just like, oh, I promise it'll be fixed before it goes into the board packet.
Okay. Where does that leave us, Candace?
It leaves us at we're done.
All right.
Are there any additional questions?
Oh.
That's a clapping hand. That's not a raised hand.
I think Trustee Silver has one.
Yeah. So yes, is okay?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I just read a little bit of the adopted budget summary, and I have 3 questions to what I got to. And on the beginning of the, let's see, page 2, beginning balances, how is it possible that an adopted budget would come onto the dollar as an actual? It seems that you worked backwards then, that you had the actual and then you made it the adopted budget, because it's
Are you
not
talking
possible.
about page 2 of this, the summary document, Trustee Silver?
Yes.
And then which line are
So
you?
the very top line, so, it just caught my eye. Very first thing, 2019, 2020 adopted budget, $30,357,663. 2019, 2020 actual audited, the same to the dollar. Well, that, and then the same for 2020, 2021 adopted budget and actual. How?
So I'm actually lost where you're looking. But
Me
that's okay.
too.
So you
Where
you
are
may
you?
be-
Where are
may-
you, Tammy?
Yeah,
The 2021-22 adopted budget summary PDF,
yeah,
the 18-page,
yeah.
Yeah.
on page 2, the very
Oh,
first
which is
line.
numbered page 1, but it's the second page in
Oh.
the PDF.
Oh, okay.
Okay, now I'm with you.
Sorry, PDF.
Bottom right-hand corner says 1, but it's really the second page in the PDF. Okay.
Oh, and I have it enlarged so I can read it, and I don't see that yet. Yeah, there's one. Okay. That's it. So the PDF page 2, beginning balance.
Let me just check back and then I'll ask. Normally speaking, anytime that we're, particularly with our restricted funds, we always designate what's coming in to expense out at that exact dollar amount because that's what's expected of us. But I'm happy to take a look at that.
Well, wait, so Tammy, you're asking about the 31,006,437? Is that what
Right.
you're asking about? Is that the
Right.
number?
My question is that how can you
Be exactly.
adopt a budget and then have it miraculously be correct to the dollar even?
No, I think it's the other way around. I think the actual is corrected to the budget. I think the actual starts
Yeah.
where these are actuals, so they start where it really was.
At the end
Right.
of last fiscal year.
Yeah,
I think it's the other way.
Oh,
But
yeah, it's
that
the other
would-
way.
got it. Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
And
thank
I'm
you.
guessing when we adopted the budget, there wasn't there wasn't maybe necessarily an exact number in the adopted budget for the beginning balance, but the actual beginning balance. So they just connected those two. Yeah.
Which, okay, which we'll now have going forward with the correct. Okay. And then somewhere, I didn't write the page down. This is when I started. The state general apportionment declined massively in 2020, 2021. I don't know what page this state.
Actually, on that same page, it's
Oh, there
under
it is.
the state general apportionment. So as there are 3 pieces that are tied, when Jesse was speaking about, there are 3 pieces that are tied up together, that if one goes up, one goes down. So for example, if you look at our 8611, so the apportionment went down.
Yeah.
It gets adjusted by that 8630, that Prop 30 educational EPA. So notice that it went from 26 to 38. And the other piece of the pie that adjusts is on the property tax revenue on page 3.
Mhm.
So all of those pieces together sort of adjust. So the pie is the pie, but those other piece slices get adjusted based on what comes in. So like, for example, we were over $4 million or received an additional $4 million on property tax revenues. That's a part of that calculation. So as those pieces adjust, you'll see the state apportionment go down.
So does that mean when our property tax revenues increase, the state deducts from other.
I don't know that they would say deduct, they adjust.
They adjust because they've determined what our total computational revenue is. And so that number is what it is, and it is determined in the system office and the chancellor's office. And then the money comes to us, as Jesse and Candace were saying, in various pies. And what made 2021 a little weird was that they stopped paying us after February, and we had the deferrals. And so we were made whole on the deferrals in July and August, but it would have made it look like we had a dramatic underfunding last year. But it's because of how it got communicated. And we took out trans, so we had the money, but it came from someplace else. And the state didn't really give us the money until July and August. It's very unclear. It's very murky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a shell game.
It's like a shell game.
You know?
Yeah.
Between those three. it is a
Yes.
shell game.
And
But our
what's important-
8817 is independent of that based on property tax revenue.
Right. And what's important really for our purposes, although we don't, take it apart here, is what's known as the total computational revenue, because it takes into account how we generate the revenue, what we have coming to us just based on our size and all of those kinds of things, and then where those pots of tax money are. So it gets broken down, but it gets broken down at different parts of the year in different ways.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not simple.
Okay.
That's why we have Candace, Jesse, and Hedva.
I'm so glad.
Yes.
Thank you.
The fiscal dream team, that's what I call them, the fiscal dream team.
Tammy, did you have more questions?
I think my third is, okay, it was, let's see, budget item number 8877, course materials fees. But I think I can answer my question. It showed income for course materials fees when we waived course materials, but I think that's showing moving funds from one of those HERF or CARES Act to cover the course materials fees that the students didn't pay.
Jesse, is that correct? I'm seeing you nod.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. So the
Yeah.
money just shifted because we were able to recover it from HERV. So the money is shifted from 8877 to 8980, the interfund transfer in.
Okay.
Good catch.
That's all.
That's it.
All right. I think we may be there. So I'm thinking that you want a motion from the committee, Jim.
So move.
A motion to recommend the adopted budget to the full board is just to finish the sentence.
Yes.
Okay.
I was actually gonna move to adjourn. But I'll do-
No, you need to do this
I'll do-
first.
We'll do that one first.
You want to second that motion, Tammy?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye. Okay, opposed. That was 3 for 3. All right. Thank you, Candace.
And Jesse.
and Jesse.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
Jesse
Your-
and Unseen Hedba.
The explanations were outstanding.
Yeah, I think they were.
Yeah.
I think you did a really nice job on that. And the trick is always what I call the Goldilocks level of making sure you're informed without totally putting us to sleep in the details. So I think you did a really good job with that. I think we're looking at a meeting schedule as our next topic.
Mm-hmm.
And what am I looking at down below on agenda here?
It just has the proposed dates along with the topics for those dates.
Looking at Board of Trustee meetings, BMA committee meetings, November 3rd. Coming quick,
Mhm.
okay. And the 311Q. Okay, I don't know that a 311Q in and of itself would warrant a meeting, especially the first quarter one.
Mhm.
If there were other
I thought we
topics of
canceled it.
importance.
I thought we canceled it at the last meeting.
Oh, maybe we did.
Yeah. So I think maybe, unless I hear an objection, we can cancel that meeting, or if
Mhm.
something comes up to the college that you need us, we could always recall it.
Okay.
Um,
So, okay.
No objection on my part to cancel.
okay.
Okay, great.
When would the next one be?
It
See,
would November 16th, and that's when the auditors will be here.
oh, well, then for sure we don't want a November 3rd.
Okay.
And I'm guessing that is the pre-audit meeting?
Jesse?
I believe that is the post-audit meeting.
It's the post
That's
audit.
post-audit.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's always nice to get us the materials,
Mhm.
especially the audit, which is now, second only to War and Peace in size.
Yeah.
Give us a little time on that if you can, really
Yes, we will.
helpful. Okay, and then after that, we're looking at what, February 9th?
December 1st?
December
December 1st.
1st is a meeting too. Boy, you just can't get away from us or something? What are we doing on December 1st that we can't mix with audit on November 16th?
Well, I think, I think you could choose to have one of those meetings, because it's really about the financial audit that then goes to the board in December. So you all need to review it. So it's up to you if you want to meet on the 16th or you want to meet on December 1st, but you don't need those two as separate meetings.
Okay,
Would it be
Unless
just-
I'm wrong, Jesse, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they can both, that really is one meeting.
Correct. Yeah, I don't think we have any more financial items to add to those meetings.
so what's the preference here?
A suggestion would be to do the earlier meeting so that if something were to come out of that meeting, a change of any sort, that would give the auditors a little bit of time before the December 8th Board of Trustees meeting. Probably
Okay.
won't happen, but it would give us time if that were to happen.
Okay, well, we'll retain then November 16th and we will cancel December 1st.
Yeah, I would cancel November 1st, but I would, instead of canceling, I think I just leave it as an on-call if necessary kind of thing, where
Okay.
at on November 1st, we can, if it helps people to cancel it now, we can cancel it. And then if there's an emergency, schedule it again. I don't care how you play it, but I think the druthers are, we don't want to meet December 1st, but if you need it,
Yeah,
if we need to,
okay.
we can.
Okay.
Okay, and
So then
then,
how long, so the November 16th would be like a 2 hour, like an hour with the auditor and then an hour of discussion amongst ourselves?
Well, I want to be really clear that has to be it's an open committee meeting. So the external auditor comes and makes a presentation and you all ask questions. They're not two separate meetings. They're a presentation of the audit and then conversation about it.
yeah, that would all be open and we can plan a couple hours. I think what
Yes.
Tammy is referencing is usually post-audit, there is an executive session on personnel. I know you and I disagree on this, and I've done
Well-
it for 30 years, and it doesn't need to be usually more than 5 minutes, but
Well, we can address that when
Yeah.
it gets closer.
on February 9th, it's the second quarter. But what I would suggest maybe we could do is make February 9th a hearty focus on our PARS investments.
Hmm.
Oh, that happens to be during I don't know if this matters. I don't know, the ACCT National Legislative Summit. I don't know if
Boy,
it's
look at
Zoom-
you calendaring ahead. You really are calendar queen. That's
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
These phone calendars.
There you go. Okay,
So,
well, are either
if
of you going, or is somebody on staff going that's a problem?
I don't
Well,
know.
Yeah,
mean,
I think, can we make a decision about that at the next meeting? Because I know that I'm going, and it sounds like probably Trustee Silver is going. So if we could, I haven't seen the actual schedule, so if we could talk about this at the next meeting, that would be perfect.
And
And I'm planning to go if we're
Yeah,
back live again.
well, let me say this. So usually early February, and if not the 9th, maybe there's the 16th or some other day, I don't know. Usually early February is a really good time to talk investment because everybody's wrapped up a calendar year.
right.
And so sometime that fits and again, not worth meeting for 311Q, but sometime where we can tag team 311Q with an hearty annual review and on the PARS investments and anything else. I know
Okay,
Candace has mentioned to me a couple ideas that have been tickling through the finance people that maybe by then you want to talk about a little bit. I don't know. So
we'll,
find something around there where we
Okay.
can put it all together. And then I don't see why we would have anything in May just for 311Q unless there's some other topic.
okay,
That's the way I'd like to see that.
all right.
So, yeah, we don't want to step on other trustees out at some place on February 9th, but let's get something that works.
Okay.
All righty.
Okay.
If it's on Zoom, it doesn't matter where we are. We can.
Let's just see as we go, because hopefully by then we don't have to Zoom.
That's
You want
supposed
to?
to expire at the end of September. So, yeah.
Anyway, I'm hoping that our world order is such that if you Zoom, it's for other reasons. It's not help. But we'll see.
Great.
So future agenda items, are there new items? And then what items are on calendar that I know the PARS was on calendar to actually have the representatives come in once and see us and make a presentation. That might work well for that February meeting. Was there any other items from the members that were past or new? And I do appreciate getting the PARS quarterly reports like you've been doing. Okay, so it was a longer meeting, but it's probably one of the more important meetings that we have. And again, I think, as you can see in our calendar scheduling, what I think is important is not to just call these meetings for small reasons, but when we do have meaty things to talk about that are meaningful, and I think this has been very productive. So at least it's been very productive for me. Okay, so unless there's something else to come up, I'm going to take us to adjournment and thank everybody.
Great. Thank you,
hard
everyone.
work and coming.
Yes, thank you.
I move we
Great job,
adjourn.
Candace and Jesse.
Yep. Oh, we got a motion for adjournment. You mean I can't do that on my own?
Oh,
If I can, I can always push the little red end button up here.
Yeah, exactly.
There, I have ways, let me tell you. Okay,
All right,
I think we're good. Thank you.
good night.
Thank you,
Good night.
everybody. Night.